Can you see my screen? Just can somebody confirm if you can see my screen?
Sir.
Sir.
Thank you. So today we'll start with basic review of application layer, what we expect application layer to do, what it consists of, what are its expectations from transport layer, and then next lecture onwards, we'll start looking into HTTP part. So if you look at the way internet started, most of the thing internet started when the web came in. That's about 1990, that is when the web browser was implemented and discovered, or you can say released. But internet started way before, 10 years ago, 1980. Until that time, all the applications were primarily text-based. Email, file transfer, everything happened used to be text-based. Come on. And web came in about 1990, and that is when it started becoming popular. Till that time, it was mostly confined to academic institutes. And when the web came in, then the e-commerce companies or the commercial companies or organizations saw the value of reaching out to other people, and that is when it exploded. So initially, if you look at the application layer, there was no notion of security. Academic world is mostly works on belief. There is no what is called spying or something of that kind, stealing secrets. So security is not given importance at all. In commercial organizations, there could be trade secrets, other stuff. So security become an issue. So security on application layer is after patch. Even HTTP originally, it has no security. It only came in about 3-4 years when Netscape introduced that. Any clue when did internet started in India? Anyone? It probably started before all you were born. Any answers? Any answer when internet started in India? It was launched as a dial-up internet by VSNL, Videsh Sanchar Nigam, on August 15, 1995. But word had started about 91, 92. And then the application started with instant messaging. What you use instant messaging today, like WhatsApp, was not there. Even Skype was not there. There used to be two main applications called Yahoo Messenger and Microsoft Net Meeting. Those are client server based, and we look at what does the client server architecture mean. Then Skype came in, which was first peer-to-peer application, and it gave much better performance. And Skype dominated the scene almost for a decade. From 2000 till about 2010, like you look at Google as the default search engine, Google was not in prominence till about 2002 or 3. Till about 2002, there used to be different search engines called Lycos, Alta Vista, something of that kind. Google came in about 2002-3, and that is when, because of better page ranking algorithm, it gained prominence and remains the king even today. Skype also gave you voice communication, and that facilitated a lot of things. Around 2005, O'Reilly has a conference on, and this is called RIA, or Rich Internet Applications, so that you can have voice and video as part of internet delivery. And that is when user engagement started a lot more. User-generated video became the factor, and that started attracting people. And all these social media applications, your Facebook, your LinkedIn, even your Apple iPhone, you look at, they all started around 2007, 2008, 2006. So you want to look at the inflection point, with the trajectory changes, that inflection point for internet, was around 2007. there were a lot of new things happen. The current decade, which is ending this year, 2010 to 20, is mostly social media computing apps. And lately we started seeing video watching, video streaming, Netflix, now you have Amazon Prime, other player maybe also there, Redbox and other stuff. Gaming industry was another factor that caution. And mobile app, you can't live without today. These were not there that prominent about 10 years ago, but they started. Now it is everybody's guess that what will the next decade be. So if you can identify the application for next decade, you probably might become a king, rule the roost, and be the leading player in the world. So all you need to do visualize is internet is a great enabler. It gives equal opportunity to everybody. There's no notion of somebody dominating the scene there. So when you look at the application perspective, we need to probably look at what kind of transport layer support it needs. It's something like, let's say I'm a principal of a college, I'm the application. I give a letter to reception or office and saying, send this letter to other principal of other college. The principal is application layer, the reception or office becomes a transport layer. Now what does principal expect? It expects that it will always be delivered. Or you to say if they deliver fine, doesn't deliver fine, we look at it. So they're both kind of applications. Now if reception has to make sure that letter is always delivered, she will make a copy, keep in the record, send it to the other reception at the other principal, and only when you get confirmation, then she'll destroy the copy kept locally. If that somehow that mail is lost, she'll make another copy, reception, and send it. So when you use a carrier or postal department, that becomes a network layer. So what does application expect from transport layer? What kind of delivery? And from application architecture perspective, is the two endpoints, because to communicate we need two endpoints, are both at equal level or is there a difference? So one is called client-server paradigm and other is called peer-to-peer paradigm, and we basically look at basic difference between the two. And lastly, if we look at internet today, even though we watch a lot of multimedia content such as YouTube, Netflix, the actual movie delivery or actual multimedia stuff doesn't come from YouTube website, even though you see YouTube, but embeddedly they always come from CDN sites called content delivery network, which are the nearest distribution point so that you consume lowest bandwidth. So that's a different way the application is kind of built and delivered. So we'll look at what the application protocols are. Primarily, if you look at a study of network means we need to communicate. Communicate means two people need to agree upon how do they communicate, what the format is, what the syntax is, what is the order message to be sent, and this happens at each layer. So studying of network is nothing but studying of protocols. So network study is full of protocols, you find anything else. Each time you study something, we'll be studying a protocol. And first protocol we'll study would be HTTP. Then this is a key protocol without which internet can't even survive. We can't even use it. Then next we study DNS, domain name system, that is needed to convert name to IP addresses. Protocols like SMTP, POP3, IMAP, they are the mail delivery protocols. Only those people who use mail client, only those people use it, others don't use it. So probably I'll give a little less focus on it. I need to include them because they're part of the course. Then we look at, if I need to write my own network application talking to other end, how do I write? What is involved? And notion of socket program would come in. It basically will make socket calls so that when you do a file IO, it's going to be very similar to file IO. When you want to read or write from a file, you first create a file in read mode or a write mode. And then you write data, receive data, and then you close the file. Mostly something similar. You'll open a socket means connect endpoint to the other connectivity, read data, send data, and after communication is done, close. We look at two kind of sockets, UDP and TCP, and these are important for you because these are part of your lab experiments as well. As I said, some experiments are nothing to do with your course, but some are, but the two experiment socket programming. So you should spend time understanding what socket programming really is. The key applications we know email. So when I say email, we really don't mean browser-based email. When you use gmail.com, that is still a browsing. Email is a top-up layer on running top of browsing. Web browsing is the one we know. Text messaging, you can do Skype, you can do WhatsApp, you can do other messages, normal chat, text. As such as when you run into a server, log into a server, deploy some application, that becomes remote login, or even Microsoft remote login, those becomes part of this category. Some of you might have done BitTorrent, use BitTorrent or torrent to download a file or movies. So that is P2P application. So we look at that part. We are not going to study multi-user gaming network, but those who want to get a good career, you can look at gaming industry, because gaming industry is considered recession-proof. Doesn't matter what happens to economy, people still buy games, play games, volume may come down, but it's never get impacted too much. And the video is full of the internet, 80% traffic is video. And then you have other kind of applications which you are probably aware of. Now, if I need to deploy a network application, what is involved? All I need to do is I can write a mobile app, and after writing a mobile app, I can deliver or write a server app and deploy. I don't need to deploy anything in the whole of the network. So the amount of time it takes me to develop my application, if I can develop in 1 day or 1 month. Now you see the ad, is coming for White Hat Junior. Using Scratch programming, you can develop an app in half a day, which is probably right. How many of you know about Scratch programming? Anyone knows about Scratch? Those who are not, I'll probably say, go to MIT. Well, basically, Scratch programming is basically visual drag and drop, and you can create an application very quickly. So if you have a reasonably good idea what you want to do, your basics are clear about controls and if conditions, you can probably develop a mobile application in half a day and deploy it. That good is, and that is what the White Hat Junior basically tells you. So in a network application, we deploy application on the end systems, your phones, your laptops, and the servers, but you don't do any changes in the core network. You remain transparent to, and that's the reason on the internet world, deploying application is very, very quick. You don't need permission from anybody. You don't need to inform ISP, look, I'm developing a mobile app, will you permit me? You don't go to VSNL or Government of India, and you don't need license from anybody. You deploy the application, you are done. And why this is important is, in traditional telecom time, when you're dealing with traditional telecom, anytime you deploy applications, all the networking elements, switches have to be involved, and any deployment would take 1 year plus onwards. Today, deployment takes less than an hour. And that's the reason internet has seen the growth in 20, 30 years, what telecom took more than 150 years. And that's so they say keep the network simple, keep intelligence at the edge. In telecom network, intelligence is in the network, and end device is a telephone. You remember black telephone we probably find in the house, and there is no intelligence there. So if the intelligence in the network, deploying any application will take more time. If intelligence is in the end device and network is simple, then deploying becomes much easier, and that is what has given exponential growth to the internet. That we talk about. We say we have two kind of applications. One is client server, other is peer-to-peer. When we use a web browser and a web server, What one would you call it? Will you call it a client server or would you call it peer-to-peer? Any answers?
Client server, sir.
Why do you say client server? Any reasons? Answer is right. So it's a particular requirement when you access Gmail or you would go to Google to search, you expect Google to be always available. Google.com is fixed address. It cannot be the today Google.com. Tomorrow it can be ABC.com. Third it could be something else. So server has to be always up and running. Server need to have a permanent address. And if you need to scale up, you can both maybe deploy in data center and deploy multiple servers, and scaling can happen. In client server, clients can come and go. It is the client who initiates communication with the server. Clients can come and go. Clients don't talk to each other. And client address is not fixed. You access google.com from home, you have one address. You access it from college, another address. You get a cafe coffee date as another address. So address can change, but that is not true for the server. And that is what client server architecture is, and key part is client do not communicate with each other, and the server part, it has a permanent address and it is always on. So in this architecture, client initiate request to the server, clients do not talk to each other, and many of the server examples, web server, FTP server, like Google, our college web server, and good number of applications are given by service provider like Gmail, or Yahoo Mail is given by respective company, Google, search engine, my Bing is by Microsoft, Facebook, social media websites, different applications, e-commerce, Amazon, eBay, Flipkart, you name it, Snapdeal, multimedia movies, Netflix, Redbox, and your communication, individual chat, individual video call, conferencing, the different applications that you basically look at. And today's servers are mostly hosted in data center because single server cannot scale up, and we need lot more power, compute power, lot more connectivity, because there are millions of users. It is not possible for a single server to access it. So let's look at now what does client server architecture or P2P will do. In P2P architecture, there is no server. When you're downloading using a torrent to download some content, you don't know which the server is. You just start, your torrent discovers other torrent peers, establish communications, and you start exchanging data. And that means different end systems connect, they somehow discover, and there may be intermediate devices at times to help you discover. But there is no dedicated server that every peer has to talk to that. And in that sense, it is not a client-server paradigm. The beauty of peer-to-peer architecture is, and when we're going to study that, it is self-scalable. More the peer, better performance we get. Whereas in client-server, if we keep adding more clients, performance goes down because server gets bogged down. Whereas in peer-to-peer, more peer comes in, we get better performance, and we get quicker results, quicker download. And that's the benefit that happens. So looking at peer-to-peer applications, I'll talk about management, why it is complex, because there is no control there. So in peer-to-peer, we don't have any dedicated server. And between the two peers, direct communication, a peer can talk to multiple peers, but typically in torrent kind of setup, a peer talks to about 4 other peers. You can change the number, but generally 4 is good enough, because after you communicate more than 4 peers, the performance suffers. But there is no such limit that you can talk to only one server. You talk to other peers, typically 4 or 5, and you keep discovering new peers. You find out what's a better peer, so leave the low performing peer and go to a better performing peer, and that's how you improve upon it. Peer could be anything, your mobile phone, your desktop, your laptop, your laptop, your iPad, and whatever you leave. And we already talk about scaling. The major challenge with peer-to-peer is basically managing security issues. And why do you think peer-to-peer you have a major security issues? Any thoughts? Guys, you need to start responding. Just because online class doesn't mean you have to keep quiet. I will start taking names. Avinash.
Start communicating between the servers.
Now, there is no server in peer-to-peer architecture. There's the key part.
Don't proceed. Don't proceed.
Lavanya. See, security is issue mainly because if there are, let's say,
Yes, sir.
yeah, if there are anti-national elements, how does government control it? With a client server, government knows where the server is, it can simply control. In peer-to-peer, the number of peers spread all over, you don't even know where they are, and there is no way government can control it. So it becomes a big security issue how to manage peer-to-peer. Other issue is, till some time ago, you look at your bandwidth plan. Most of it on mobile, your upload speed is much lower than the download speed. It has changed with Jio, but till you had Airtel and other mobile, your download speed was much higher than the upload. So if you're doing a video conference calling with a friend, the download could be much faster or watching a movie, but your uploading much slower. And that means it becomes a challenge because communicating both will require equal bandwidth, which is not available. So ADSL, which is called asymmetric DSL, does not really work. And that's the reason of ADSL. Security, we already talked about it. We can't identify it, becomes tougher. Other challenge is, let's say I want to download a movie using torrent. I completed my movie. Now why should I stay in the network? Because my job is done. I'm a selfish guy. So how to incentivize a person to stay? You download a movie from others, but
Hello,
you also
excuse me,
others
sir.
to download. So that, but for me to stay in the
Hello,
network,
excuse me, sir.
hello? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, sir, for disturbing.
No.
Sir, still the security of peer-to-peer architecture is not means understandable.
Okay.
It
See,
doesn't clarify the doubt.
security mean, let's say I know some people are using google.com to do some nefarious activities. Government can easily identify and shut down Google. So you are shut down for the time being. So security activities
Yes.
come to a stop. And Google knows who are the people who accessed it, so they can be tracked. In peer-to-peer case, government has no control because there is no single entity which is controlling the peer-to-peer distribution. So tracking those users and blocking it is not possible by the government. Government can't even do snooping at all. Okay.
Oh, okay, sir.
So that's the reason it becomes an issue. So other challenge is incentive. Once my download is complete, why should I remain in the network? Because my work is done. We are selfish by nature. So some incentive should be there for a peer-to-peer user to remain in the network even though his or her download is complete. And that becomes challenging, but nonetheless we look at. Now, looking at the generic architecture, how do we do the basic communication? Any communication would require, I send a message, I get a response. In client server, it's called request and response messages. Another peer-to-peer, just sending a message and getting a message back. Now, when you communicate, you have a syntax and semantics. Anyone like to explain the difference between syntax and semantics? Difference between syntax and semantics? Can you give me an example? Chatra? Aruna would like to answer difference between syntax and semantics. How do you define your USN number? You define as 1, KS, 18, CS,
CS
and then 001 or whatever. So syntax is first character is digit, then 2 characters are alphabets, then 2 characters are digit corresponding to year, then 2 characters alphabet, and then 3 characters are digit. So basically specifying the format, and that is syntax. Now, what are the valid values? If I were to say 1 KS, 18 CS, 179, is it a valid USN? Is it invalid USN? You don't know because it depends on the student. Or I can say 1 KS, 18 CS, that's a 025, assume the student is not there. From syntax perspective, it is fine, but it doesn't make any meaning. Or syntax perspective, when I say digit has to be 0, I can say 0, ZZ, 00, YY, 000. It follows the syntax. So semantics is driving meaning out of the message. Syntax is defining the format and what value can go in. So we need to define those when we discuss protocols. We look at those. And to do any communication, you do ordering of messages, you define what needs to be done. Like you check your bank balance, you have to log in first. Without doing a login first, you can't get a bank balance. And that way, you look at these things. So when you discuss protocol, we look at all those. Now protocols are again of 2 types. One is called open protocols and closed or proprietary protocols. Open protocols are those which are open and anybody can implement. Let's say I ask you to implement a browser, and I'm going to ask you to actually implement a browser as part of assignment, a very mini browser. Will it work with Google or Yahoo? Answer is yes, because Google and Yahoo talk HTTP protocol, and as long as you can talk HTTP protocol, you can communicate. So anybody who can implement it can communicate with each other, and that's the benefit of open protocols. HTTP, SMTP, all the protocols you name are open protocols. We all use WhatsApp. Can you write your own WhatsApp client and communicate with others? Chandan? Question
No,
is,
sir.
can you write your own WhatsApp client, your own software without downloading from them? Will it still work?
No, sir. No, sir.
No, because you don't know the communication protocol. They're not published it.
Yes, sir.
So when they don't publish it, you download only the software, they control it. These are called proprietary protocols. So WhatsApp, Skype, they follow the proprietary protocol models. Both are in place, both works, but the open UR, it becomes open to competition, price comes down. Skype and WhatsApp, they think they want to dominate the network, like Skype dominated till about last decade. Now WhatsApp dominate. Tomorrow somebody else will come, that will dominate. But HTTP browser, that depends how good you are, you'll continue to thrive. So always better to open protocol than proprietary. So proprietary may give you benefit for some time, but not for always. So keep that in mind. Now looking from transport, application, as I said, when principal need to send a letter, what does he expect from reception? That if she sends a person, a security guard fell sick, she will find another security guard. If she uses a postal network, if postal network drops it, she'll send it, or she uses an agency which delivers letter in one day. So what does principal expect from transport layer as a reception? Same way, what does my application expect from a transport layer? One is that there should be no corruption. Whatever data I have sent, it should go same way, not even a single byte should be corrupted. Let's say you are downloading your admit card, and there's a 1-digit change in USN number, whole thing becomes invalid. So you want to make sure that when data is transmitted on the transport layer, there is no corruption. Second part is, we look at timing. Can it deliver in time? When I search Google, I expect answer to come within a second. If I go to my bank site, I expect maybe in 3 seconds. If it takes a minute, which says something is wrong. Some applications may say the data could be lost. Like if I'm doing voice communication, and for a moment, if my 100 millisecond of voice is lost, I can still make sense out of it. So my voice application can tolerate some loss, but not corruption. My timings important for voice, but not important for browsing. Other is throughput. If I'm doing a video watching, I expect transport data to give me high throughput, maybe 5 Mbps, 10 Mbps. I also would like to get security that nobody should be able to snoop in. And we study these details, confidentiality, integrity, authentication, subsequently. We look at those when you deal with that. So primarily just to quickly give you the idea of different applications, what do we expect? So if you look at file transfer, email, web, there are no loss applications, whereas real-time audio, video, loss tolerant, text messaging, don't expect any loss. The other applications, if you look at file transfer, email and web, they are elastic, means they can work with any bandwidth. Video require a high bandwidth, text require very low bandwidth. Gaming, even though you see a high screen, but game actions are only communicated, which requires very low bandwidth. Again, the file transfer, email are very not time sensitive, but video and voice communication is, so look at from those perspectives. We'll study more in the two kind of transport protocol, TCP and UDP. You might have studied a little bit in last semester, but we'll get into more details. TCP gives me reliable, and reliable does not mean guaranteed delivery. So we'll look at what does it mean. We'll look at flow control, meaning receiver controlling the sender. Congestion means network is overloaded, but none of the protocol provide security or throughput guarantees or timing. But this application still work, and we look at how do application work, even though none of the transport here, but TCP and UDP give me any guarantee of security or minimum throughput or that minimum delay. The data will deliver in 1 second, no. UDP, again, same thing. UDP can lose a packet. It can deliver out of order. We'll look at those protocols when we study. UDP does not provide any congestion flow control. When we study those, we look at those parts. And again, it does not give me any throughput or security guarantee. So we start with our application layer protocol, starting from HTTP. We look at different fields, look at the messages. Okay, anytime I communicate, I'm sending something, I'm receiving something. We look at the kind of messages, request, response, or send, receive, what the syntax is, what the semantics is, what the different fields are, and we look from there. So primarily we start with HTTP protocol first, then we look at DNS, email applications we look at later. So I'll spend more time on HTTP starting from Mondays, and then DNS and other stuff. So these are the applications you probably know use it. So as I said, we'll study SMTP a little bit. Telnet is not part of the course we want to study. Web HTTP study in deep details. File transfer part of the course, minorly we study. HTTP streaming, this part of the course, the whole module 5 is that. We're going to study that. WIPE, SIP and RTP is part we'll study but not SIP. And we'll look at those part of scenario. And they are basically make use of either TCP or UDP protocol, and that we're going to study. So with that, I'll probably end. So I recommend you read the chapter 2 of the book, because for next whole lecture, next 7-8 lectures, I'm going to cover from chapter 2. I also done a recording of this. I'll try to upload and send it. In case you have a question, ask me. But next time I'll make sure I won't be late.
What about the textbook copy, sir?
Talk to your class rep. He'll help you getting it.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Anything else?
Happy Teachers' Day, sir.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for all of you guys. Okay, then let me discuss on Monday. Plus, come prepared, be active to discuss so that we can discuss things. Thanks again. Look at the exercises, do it. You're probably helpful.